Hello YouTube! Making a video today. It's my first YouTube video and I would like to do so to explain a couple things to new Gladiator Beast players and to people who were curious as to why Gladiator Beast players play more than 40 cards. I'm going to touch on that, and I'm going to touch on why Gladiator Beast players choose to play some of the optional monsters in it. It's all in one video, and that's that. So I'm making this video on the heels of Chase Simpson's win at Edison Worlds. He was obviously playing Gladiator Beasts. He destroyed everyone. The best deck, which is Gladiator Beasts. And he did so with 42 cards. So a lot of people have been asking, and have asked even prior to this win, why do Gladiator Beast players play so many cards in their deck? And it gets asked constantly, probably at least once a day. Sometimes more, sometimes less, but I'm constantly asked it. People are constantly asking it in the Edison format Discord, and I just figured if someone made a video on it, maybe we could talk about something else. So for context, my name is Morph. I'm the only person to win an Ultimate Time Wizard with Gladiator Beasts. I am not saying that to say that I'm the best Gladiator Beast player or that I have the most experience with Gladiator Beasts, because I definitely am not either of that. But I know something about Gladiator Beasts, and I could definitely explain to you some of the reasons. So I'm going to do that. So because this is my first YouTube video, and because this is like my third take, I'm going to be reading a little bit off of PowerPoint. So just keep that in mind. I'm doing my best, and I'm going to get started. So to start, I have to talk about why people play 40 cards in Yu-Gi-Oh, which most people know, but I got to start there. So let's get this out of the way. Most people want to play 40 cards in most decks because you want to see your one-ups. So you want to see your dust shoot, you want to see your heavy, you want to see your cat, you want to see your trap stuns, like, duh, right? So like, why would we play more than 40? That doesn't make any sense. Well, it's not because Gladiator Beast players don't like seeing their one-ups, because we do, but it's because the way Gladiator Beast players lose is because they draw 4 of their monsters in their hand and they cannot play the game. So, by playing more monsters, right, you're ensuring your loss because you're more likely to draw more monsters. But the problem is with Gladiator Beasts is that each Gladiator Beast does something important for the deck. So you can't simply cut all your Gladiator Beasts and have a slimmed down deck and be able to play the game optimally. So in order to do that, you either have to cut your engine, which I can do very simply, like this, say, right? Which is fine, but it comes at the expense of your engine. So the big question is, do you prefer the 40 card deck, right? With a better chance to draw your one-ups, albeit marginally better chance, or do you prefer to have a more powerful engine? And that is not a question I'm answering, but a question I am posing to you. So I'm going to show you one of the tools that I use in order to determine whether each side is worth the trade-off. So I made this little table, which I think is kind of cool. And I know it looks like gobbledygook, but I'm going to explain it as best I can to you. So right here, this little column shows how many main deck cards are in your deck. The next is how many normal summons are in your deck. And then after that is a whole bunch of numbers to say, if I have 0 monsters in my hand, what's the likelihood I drew 0 monsters in my hand? So 6% of games with this ratio, I'm drawing 0 monsters, which is poopy. That stinks. Likewise, like in about 10% of games with this ratio, I'm drawing 4 to 6 monsters, which is actually pretty good. So I am showing you this table to show you that the amount of monsters you have in your deck, aka your engine, matters a lot in context to the size of your main deck. So that's pretty much that. So I pretty much think the most important numbers to look at when you're determining your deck size or your engine size is these numbers. So you do not want to draw 0 monsters because that stinks. And you don't want to draw more than 4 monsters. So these 2 columns, right? These pretty much mean you lose the game. It's not true, but like for the context of our graph, it is. And you can argue, I have all these little numbers over here, like, is it optimal to draw just 1 monster or 2 or 3? And I personally feel like Yu-Gi-Oh is kind of complicated, and I'm not a statistician, whatever. I'm not a math man, but I can say that between 1 and 3 is typically what you want to shoot for, and you don't want to shoot for 0 or 4+. So I made a little column here which represents the chances you open 0 or 4+, which is identical to 1 to 3. But anyway, I'm going to sort by that quickly. So as you can see, this is what the stats on the screen would kind of symbolize to be the best ratios for your deck. So if you're strictly making this decision off of the ratios, which Yu-Gi-Oh is complicated, these would kind of be your best ratios. So, you know, if you're going strictly by this number, which I don't think is correct, like it's showing you that this ratio would be optimal. So obviously you'd have 45 cards in your main deck, which has its own problems, but at least you're drawing the perfect number of monsters more likely in this scenario than not. So I typically feel like that's too many monsters. This is pushing it too, but if you're between this range of, 14 normals with 40 main deck cards, or 15 normals with 43 or 42, like, you can kind of bridge the gap between having a better engine while still maintaining a smaller deck size for the benefits of that. But obviously you can draw your own conclusions from these numbers. It's really not my place to say what's better or what's worse. I just want people to realize and have the tools to make those decisions themselves. So I'm going to make this Excel available. All I did was go in the Yu-Gi-Oh calculator and I manually typed in all these numbers and it spit it out, which I can show you in another video. But for now, you're going to have to trust me on this. But yeah, so one thing I want to show you though is that, say you had 40 main deck cards, right? Which typically people would consider to be the best across the board. You ask any layman in Yu-Gi-Oh, or even some people who've been around the block for a while, and they'll always tell you that 40 cards is optimal no matter what. Like, do not play more than 40 or you're hurting your deck. Well, I pose this. If you were running 40 cards in your main deck, but 16 normal summons, which is a very realistic number of monsters to hit in Gladiator Beasts, 20% of the games you're opening 0 monsters or over 4 monsters. Like 16% of your games, you're going to be drawing over 4 monsters. That will lose you the game. So, the rebuttal is, well, don't run that many monsters. That's fine. That's just my point. It's complicated. So, that being said, there's a couple other reasons why you don't run more than 40. They're not the primary reasons, but like one thing about Gladiator Beast 2 is that I'm going to just trim this up a little bit. So we're at 40, but like this is a list that is kind of typical for a 40 card Gladiator Beast list, in that you play one of each Glad. I've seen a couple Italians top with a similar strategy, and that's totally valid. But one reason I'm showing you this is that Gladiator Beasts do not like to draw their Gladiator Beasts. So in this scenario, say I open a Murmillo, right? Murmillo in my opening hand means that I cannot tag for a Murmillo, right? But by adding artificially more cards to your deck, you are less likely to open multiple of the same Gladiator Beasts, which means you can tag for them. So one real downside to playing too many monsters in your deck, or not having enough cards in between your monsters, is that say you open a hand of 4 monsters, and it is Laquari, Rediari, Equest, Darius. Now there's 4 different Glad Beasts that you cannot tag into. So on top of your life being really hard already, because you have 4 normal summons in your hand, now they do a lot less because they cannot tag into the cards you need. Another reason why you probably want to play more than 40, which is kind of just bonus reasons, not real reasons to really do it, is you know, you're on top of like spreading your bricks out, which is, you know, the Glad Beasts I consider kind of bricks, is that your cat and your Samnite are a little farther apart. It's not really a big reason. I wouldn't even talk about it if it wasn't on my PowerPoint, but it's there. Another is that it allows you to play 3 of cards. You can typically only play 2. A lot of 40 card Gladiator Beast lists play 2 Trap Stun. I think that card's broken. You should play 3. And if it's already kind of helping you to play more than 40 anyway, it could tip you over the edge into like, maybe I do play a little more than 40 cards in my Glad Beast deck, and I get to play an extra Trap Stun, or an extra Compulsory, or a Deep Prison. And another reason is that you can side more cards in. So if you're really slim on 40 cards, and say, I don't know, Dust Tornado is really broken in this matchup, or Consecrated Light. I'm just going to go Dust Tornado because there's 2 here, but say Dust Tornado is really broken in this matchup, and you can only side 1 in because you only have 40 cards in your deck, and there's only so much you could take out. Well, now you can add another Dust Tornado, and now you've essentially doubled the chance that you're going to draw a Dust Tornado, because having 2 Dust Tornadoes in 42 cards versus 1 Dust Tornado in 40, the difference is exponential of drawing that card. Not the greatest example, but it is an example of a card. Another reason is you can main more side cards. So I typically like to have 3 Compulse in my deck for the volume matchup. But if it came down to it, there's a pretty good likelihood that if I had to trim down to 40 cards, Compulse is not making the cut on my side deck. So by playing more cards, I actually have access to more cards between my 40 card main deck and 15 card side. Turns into, say, 42, 43, and 15. So in a weird way, you're able to side more cards. Again, these are like footnote reasons. I'm not saying like the only reason, but it's a nice little bonus when you're just trying to spread your monsters out and have a stronger engine, to have a little bit of an extra reason to justify playing more cards in your deck. So now that I've explained some of the reasons why you play more than 40 cards, again, the primary reason being to just make your engine stronger while maintaining your normal summon ratio. That's the primary reason. You have to consider what cards are going to be contained in your deck that justify you boosting your deck up, because obviously to maintain this ratio, we can start cutting some engine out and do the same thing. So the cards have to be worth increasing your deck. Otherwise, just run 40. So I'm going to go over some of the optional monsters and why you would consider increasing your deck size in order to run it. So I have a couple favorites. I'm just going to go in order of my PowerPoint, but the first I'm going to talk about, I have this little deck that I made. It has pretty much everything in it. So for the sake of the video, I'm going to do that. But the first monster I'm going to talk about is Darius. So I'm going to try to keep things a little more concise because I don't want this video to run too long. But the reason why you want to run more than Darius, or more than one Darius rather, is that his stat line matters. So Darius is big. He's 1700 attack. Trades with Bora, trades with Greffer. Really good in the GB mirror because it gets over everything minus Laquari and Stratos. So if you need to attack with the Darius, and he's your only Darius, you have to baby the Darius, because if it gets banished, you're screwed. There's no more Darius in your deck, and he's really important. So if you play 2, now all of a sudden your 1700 Darius is like a disposable high stat line monster that can trade easily into other monsters or back row. So that's good. Another reason you want to play 2 Darius is that because he's so useful, if you open a hand with, say, like a Darius in it and say like Prisma Tiger, now your Prisma Tiger is pretty awful because your bestie does nothing. So, you would go typically Prisma, dump, Tiger into Darius, but now it does literally nothing. So yes, you can get the Darius back in your deck, but it's difficult to do. You're likely to have to waste cards to try and baby it back into your deck, like a Trap Sun you wish you could have just used for your big sweep Prisma Test Tiger play. But now you're trying to baby a Darius back into your deck. So not saying it's not correct to play 1 Darius, because I even currently play 1 Darius, but I'm just saying that it's a very useful card to play in multiple. Something to consider. So another reason to run 2 Darius is that it actually opens up a couple cool plays that would otherwise not be available with 1 Darius. So one very standard GB opening is to normal Prisma, and I don't know, just because it's in my hand, I'm gonna set Wabaku. And these are in the deck, obviously, but I'm leaving them here for fun. You go Prisma Dump, Laquari. Say this lives, we Wabaku. Next turn we draw. And now we dump Bestie. This is in our deck. Sorry if this is confusing. But now we can actually test Tiger. And essentially, as the game progresses, if you're able to summon 2 Darius at some point, off of Gizaris or whatever, now you can actually double Darius. So what's cool about this play is that you can Gizaris, and then after you Gizaris, then you can Herc. Another fun thing about double Darius is that in the same vein as that, say we went more for that Prisma play first turn, which I understand that wasn't exactly 1-to-1 when I did it before, but we have the Prisma, we dump. If we go Secutor at some point in the game, say we Tiger this back, now we can double Darius with the Secutor, which allows us to Giz Herc, because obviously we got Giz, we got Herc, and that was all with 1 Secutor. So that's not always going to happen. It's not likely to happen, but it's a nice little bonus, and it does happen. Last thing I'll say about Darius before I'm talking too much about Darius. It's actually kind of useful to Darius for a GB and then Tiger into another Darius. So again, this doesn't happen all too often, but it does happen. Sometimes you will Darius, activate, go for like a GB, and then you can Tiger into another Darius. So what is useful about this is sometimes you have to play around a Necrogarda, and this can kind of, in a way, play around a Necrogarda. Sometimes you just need to do a lot of damage. So you have a Gizengrave, and now you're at 1700, and a 24. Like, that's a lot. There's a couple of reasons why this would occur, and it's just nice to have the option to do it. Another good thing about this play is after you giz, if it all lands and sticks, you have 3 tags now, and now that's a herc. So anyway, I'm talking too much about Darius already. We're going to move on to the Samnite. So that's the new flavor. It's definitely not new, but it is the current flavor of the month is the double Samnite. And there's plenty of good reasons to run 2 Samnite. I'm not currently on that, but this video is not about me. Just about what people do and why. So the primary reason you run 2 Samnite is that double Samnite plays around Necrogardna. So if you go Cat and you go double Samnite, if your opponent went, say, Armageddonite, dump Necro, you can now play through that card. So that's extremely useful in that specific scenario, because otherwise, this would be your typical Cat play. This does very little to that, because you still have to play through a Necrogardna, and you're not getting a whole ton of value out of it. Another reason you want to play 2 Samnite is that, if you end up drawing your Samnite and your Cat, you still have the ability to go Cat, because Samnite is, like I said with Darius, it's difficult to baby him back in the deck sometimes. If something happens to him, you're screwed. And then the final reason you want to play 2 Samnite is if, it gives you the ability to actually tag in a Samnite, because if you only have 1 Samnite, unless your Cat's gone, it's very difficult to go raw Samnite, because if something happens to it, your Cat's dead. So typically you don't summon this thing raw. But now with the ability to go Samnite, if you play Shrink, now you have a very threatening play where if they end up attempting to battle your Samnite, you get a search with the Shrink. And it could be useful if you have the Shrink. If you don't have the Shrink, it's still threatening. They don't know. So that's useful. And then another useful thing about the double Samnite that some people don't realize is that with a Tiger, it lets you Gizaris them without Bessie being engraved. So if you go Cat into double Samnite, it allows you to just go Test Tiger. So you use this, because why not? Test Tiger into Bessie, which like duh. Now we're Gizarising them. Like, great, good job. That's pretty much it. So I'm gonna keep moving on, so we keep going. Next thing I'm gonna talk about is a controversial one. I'm skipping ahead to a non-GB, but we're gonna talk about Stratos. So Stratos is a bit controversial, but it's a frequently asked GB card. And I figured I should talk about it before people click off the video. So what's good about Stratos is trades with Stratos, trades with Shura, trades with Gearframe, kills Bora, kills Greffer, trades with Raikou. That's useful. Not only is it trading, like good, right? But he is not a vanilla. He searches Prisma. And if you guys don't know, Prisma is one of the best cards in Gladiator Beasts. So say you open up going second, right? Your opponent sets a Raikou, sets a back row, and this is, say, I don't know, your hand. You have other cards, but it lets you go like Stratos, activate, we had the Prisma, attack the Raikou, set the trap stun, and now we're all set up for next turn. So yeah, we didn't necessarily have the ability to go Tiger, Test Tiger this turn, but it did let us trade with something and then set up for the turn after. So yes, occasionally you want to Prisma immediately, but Stratos searches Prisma, you maintain tempo, and then you can typically still Prisma the turn after, and sometimes you want the turn to actually trap stun or set the trap stun, and it is useful. And in the same vein, I'm going to talk about Rhoda quickly. So in the same vein, Rhoda is very nice to run with Stratos, but it lets you run 3 copies of Prisma in a way, because you can Rhoda for Stratos or Prisma. which is incredibly versatile and useful. Last little comments about Stratos. You know, sometimes the other effect is useful. You know, sometimes you go Prisma, and now you can summon a Stratos, activate the effect of pop, force out any kind of weird cards that are chainable, like books or compulse, or pop it, and now you can still test Tiger with the Prisma. It doesn't happen that often, but it can happen. Stratos is also typically pretty good because you play 2 to 3 compulse, and I know it appears a bit cloggy in your hand, but it is nice to be able to have the option to compulse a Stratos if you need to. And that's Stratos. So last thing about Stratos and Rhoda is it helps you insulate a little bit with Dust Shoot with the Rhoda. Not like it matters that much in GB, but they typically side it out game 2 and 3. But also lets you play D Warrior Lady or Assailant in the side, and it does thin the deck marginally, which is nice. You know, Rhoda for Stratos for Prisma. But anyway, I'm talking too much about this card. After that, I mean, I guess I could kind of talk about Prisma as an optional card. I do not believe he's optional in GB. You could argue about like the 4th Prisma, which would be like if you ran 2 Prisma and a Rhoda and, I don't know, a 3rd Prisma instead of a Stratos. And I guess like the good part about that is it's all gas. You're going crazy. Like, that's cool, but it can be really clumpy, especially if you end up drawing a Darius or a Bestie. Like, they can be pretty dead. And, you know, obviously Prisma is amazing in GB into game 2 and 3 because typically people side into Cyber Dragon for you. So you can Prisma dump Cyber Dragon and have a really good clapback into the Sidra they summoned into your GB or Stratos or whatever. That's it on him. Next thing I'll talk about is the double Radiari. This was pretty typical to be in all GB decks at 2 about a year ago. And at the time, I could see why. You know, there was a lot more frogs. And the reason why you want to run a 2 Radiari is not necessarily that you're going to go Gizaris into 2 Radiari at the same time, which does happen, but more that after you tag into a Radiari, he's typically not going to stick around too long. He might die, and then you're out of Radiaris for the rest of the match. So by having 2, you have the ability to go into a second later. On top of that, if you end up drawing your Radiari, like any other GB, you have the same problem of getting it back in the deck by the time you have to use his effect. So that's pretty much it for him. Equest, you know, some people consider it mandatory to run 2. He's not. You can run 1. You can side down to 1, you know, with especially if you're taking out your chariots for a matchup like Black Wings. But anyway, the reason why you want to run 2 Radiari is that the same way as, or rather 2 Equests, is the same way you want to run 2 Radiari in that he is weak. If something happens to him, like often does, you have the ability to go into a second later in the game. That's pretty much it. Equest can also add Equests. That's pretty good. You know, nice to have the option. And that's kind of it for your extras. There's a couple other silly cards you could run on top. One thing I forgot to mention about Radiari too is he gets under bottomless. Sometimes it's useful, but the only other silly cards, like you can justify running a hamster, I suppose. I'm not going to talk about it here. You could also talk about Proving Ground, which I'm not partial to, but it does let you have the option of grabbing a Laquari just for the beat, or the Bestie to go into a Gizaris play. Sometimes that's good in the mirror when you just need a big monster or you want your Bestie to land without being able to get booked like a Prisma. But yeah, that's pretty much every card typically played as a bonus. Sorry if this video ran super long. Thanks for sticking around. This is my first video. I'm sure it's not perfect, but I'm hoping that it could answer some people's questions, and I hope that everything in it made sense, because this is my third take and I am super burnt. But thanks for watching, and I will see you on the next one if there is a next one. Thank you.